Oh, hello. My name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Whoa. Okay, so we are somehow in the middle of September already. Where does the time go? I don't even know. And yeah, it's time for me to update you guys on what I'm reading right now / what I'm going to be reading. I'm gonna say that, again, it's just been a weird month because of the stuff that's been going on with my family. So I've been very distracted. I finally sat down and wrote out my eulogy, and I think that took a lot of weight off my mind. So I think I have some more mental space to actually read, but I was having a really hard time reading in the evenings because I just could not focus. But I think since doing that brain dump, that has sort of cleared the decks a little bit for me. So, I still actually have gotten quite a bit read. I think I've read, let's see here, I think maybe like 12 things so far-ish. Yeah, I mean, that includes March, which was, I'll just go ahead and talk about that. March, which is a 3-volume work. I did a whole review on this, so I'll link that somewhere. But yeah, this was amazing. This is, my favorite, tied for my favorite thing I've read so far this month. But yeah, so I read 12 things, 3 of which were 3 editions of a collected work. So if you want to count that as 1, that would make it more like 10, I guess. But anyway, so yeah, I don't think it's been like totally unproductive so far, but I know that my head has not been in the game as much on reading. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to getting through the service and kind of getting back to a little bit more of a new normal, I guess, and kind of, working through the grieving process and just getting back to life a little bit more than I have been so far this month. So anyway, I'll tell you a little bit more about a couple of other things I read, and then we can talk about what I might read next. So I mentioned that March was tied for my favorite thing I've read so far this month. The other favorite thing that I've read so far this month was unquestionably stamped from the beginning. Hoo boy. That is really fascinating history of racist ideas in America. And it goes back to, I think, roughly like the 1400s-ish. I mean, there's some allusions to some like racist ideas about African people from kind of like antiquity. He gets into some of that, like really far back stuff, but really it starts like kind of with the Portuguese in the 1400s and then like walks through today. Histories. I just found it was like an amazing book. I really want to do a review of it, so if I can get my act together, I will do that. But basically, I'm sure I'll talk about this more in my wrap up. It was amazing. It was a 5-star book for me. Which I've only given out 3 of those this year. That means it's an all-time favorite. It just was really helpful in sort of like locating where various ideas and people kind of fit into the history of racism. And I felt like it did, I love intellectual histories, and I felt like this was such a relevant and important intellectual history that like maybe everybody should read. It was so good. So anyway, I finished that. I've been kind of working on it for probably the last 6 weeks on audio, and I wrapped that one up. 2 things that did not work that well for me. And originally these were going to be a part of Southern September, and I have made the executive decision that I'm not going to make individual videos about these. I'm just going to talk about them now because I don't feel like I have enough to say to make up individual videos. So that's just my executive decision. And that is Let Us Now Praise Famous Men by James Agee, and Love in the Ruins by Walker Percy. I'll just start with Love in the Ruins. I DNF'd it. I don't know if it's just where I'm at in my head right now or what, but like it just tonally did not work for me. I didn't find it funny. I didn't like the narrative voice. Like I just really didn't care for it. And it really surprised me because I remember quite liking The Moviegoer. I do think The Moviegoer doesn't have the same sort of like comedic, I didn't find it funny, but comedic tone to it. I don't remember it having the same level of that. And I also wonder if just like because of where I'm at like religiously these days, if I'm not as sympathetic to some of the sort of like thematic things that are happening, and I don't find it as cute as maybe I would have at some point. Anyway, I just DNF'd it. Lots of people love Walker Percy, so like this is just my opinion, but yeah, I DNF'd that one. And then Let Us Now Praise Famous Men, I have more complicated feelings about, and I guess I probably could make a whole video about this, but I think I would just sum it up. I eventually gave it 3 stars because the writing, I admire it. I can understand why people really love it. I don't think it's bad. I just think I feel really conflicted about it as a project. he uses really poetic language in what I thought was going to be a much more straightforward nonfiction account of sharecropper life in the 1930s, like rural South. And it is a nonfiction account, but the language he uses is much more appropriate for like memoir or literary fiction, in my opinion. And I feel like, I think it's intentional. I think the project of the book is to make it about himself in some way. Like, I think that's part of what he's trying to do. So, like, I don't want to shit on him for successfully doing what he was trying to do. I just think I feel very conflicted about that as a project. And I felt very distanced from it, like, because of the language. I had a really hard time connecting with it language-wise. The photographs in it are absolutely beautiful. I mean, that I think it's Walker Evans who did that, and that I really enjoyed. And I guess it was a book I could admire but not like, and I think I just felt really conflicted. It was a very, it's a very postmodern project that he has, but I just think I felt like the project was a little disrespectful to the actual people who were involved because it is nonfiction. I don't know. I just had a lot of sort of like very mixed feelings about it, so I ended up giving it a 3-star, but I didn't really feel like I wanted to spend a whole video talking about it. So those are 2 more entries in Southern September. March was the first one. And then I am going to read at some point, hopefully this month, Go Set a Watchman by Harper Lee. I'm expecting that I'm going to have enough to say about this to still make a video dedicated to this. That's the plan, at least at this point. So yeah, I'm still looking forward to this, and then that would wrap up Southern September in terms of my TBR. But yeah, so I'd say March was a huge hit. The next 2, not so much, and then we'll see how this one goes. So Southern September, its fate is still sort of in the balance at this point. And then another thing I thought about making a whole video about, and like if I had fewer ideas, maybe I would have done this, but I have so many ideas and no time to do all of them. So I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to talk about it here. Last weekend, I read 4 romance novels, and all 4 of them I ended up giving 3.5 stars. So I thought it might be interesting if I did a whole video talking about why each of them were 3.5 star, but I'm just going to kind of run through them because like 3.5 star, I think is like a pretty good romance, right? Like, I mean, that's enjoyable. And if any of these sound, and I should say these were from almost all authors that I've previously read and loved. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight them because if any of these sound appealing to you, feel free, I hope somebody will pick some of these up because I think they're enjoyable. So the first 2 are arcs. The first one is All I Want for Christmas is a Cowboy by Jessica Clare. Cowboys are not usually my preferred trope, but this is Jessica Clare, who is one of my very favorite contemporary romance authors because I really connect with her humor. I really like her ethereal voice. I know it's not for everyone, but for me it really works. And so it was her, and then also it was a snowed in like forced proximity trope, and I am like a sucker for that. I think it probably would have been better served being a novella rather than a novel, which is why I gave it 3.5 stars instead of 4, but I really enjoyed it. It was just like light fun. I enjoyed what she was doing with the forced proximity trope of being snowed in the middle of Wyoming or wherever they are. Like, I really like that. It worked for me, and it was just like enjoyable frippery. The next one was Rebel Heart by Nalini Singh. Now, Nalini Singh, I prefer overall her work in paranormal and urban fantasy romance. I love her Changeling series. It's one of my very favorites. So that's where I prefer her, but she does, like, I don't think she's ever written a terrible book. Like, she's just a very proficient author. And I do like the contemporaries that this book was in, like the series that it's in, set in New Zealand around some like interrelated people. I really like the family that it's connected to, basically. So anyway, I liked this. This was basically an arranged marriage contemporary between 2 Indian New Zealanders, and kind of, it was just really interesting. It was a much more angsty book than I tend to like, which is why it was like a 3.5 and not a 4, because I'm always preferring lower angst. That's just my personal preference in romance. But I thought it was really well handled. I thought the whole arranged marriage aspect was really interesting and handled in a very complicated way, which was fun. And I liked that it was 2 adults who would talk about their feelings. Like, I like that the conflict was not like, I have feelings and I won't talk about it. Like, that is one of my least favorite things. So I enjoyed that they were 2 mature adults, like, working through the actual issues they had that were keeping them apart. The next one was Remedial Rocket Science by Susannah Nix. And I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I gave this 3.5 stars. Or did I maybe I actually gave this one 4. Did I give this 4? Oh, okay. I actually gave this 4 stars. Sorry. Oh, so that whole video premise would have just been for naught. Anyway, this one I did give 4 stars. This might be my favorite new adult book I've ever read, and that is because it is one of the only new adult books I've ever read that actually has conflicts that I think resonate with people in their early 20s who are learning how to adult. I was like, this actually resonates with how that was for me, and it's not just like super over the top angst, like, rah, like I don't enjoy that in new adult. It also did not have rape as a backstory, which like almost all new adults I've ever read have, and I don't really like the way it usually is handled in that. I thought this was really, really good. So it's billed as like a nerdy romance, and I would say that's a little bit of a stretch, but it is all about women in STEM professions, and this heroine she's a computer scientist basically, and yeah, it's like a kind of a friends to lovers, kind of a like one night stand to relationship. Like there's a few things, but I liked that it was a slow burn. It takes a long time for them to kind of like get all their stars aligned. He's actually he's with another woman for like half this book. So like it takes a while for all the pieces to come together, but I actually thought it was handled really, really well. It's the beginning of a series, like I said, of women who are in STEM professions, and so I'm really excited to read more from her. I got the first book for free, and it actually still may be free on Kindle, so this book, Remedial Rocket Science, if you're interested in it, it might be free right now on Kindle. The second one, I think was 99 cents. So I got both of those. I got 2 for 99 cents, and then I'm waiting at the library for the third one. So yeah, I enjoyed it, and it had a lot of the sort of like tone that I like in romance, especially in contemporaries, and I thought that it handled a lot of some of the like power dynamic issues that come up in contemporaries pretty well. So really enjoyed that one. And then the fourth one in that little spate of romances I read was Make Me by Tessa Bailey, and maybe I should talk about this in my wrap up because I have a lot of thoughts about this one. This was a 3.5 for me. What I'll say is that I think that this handles the overprotective alpha trope in the most interesting way I've ever seen. It was not without being problematic, but I felt like the author was in control of the problematic elements, was aware of them, and I felt like by the end had sufficiently addressed them. So I thought it was a really good example of that. It's basically a friends to lovers trope. Again, I really like friends to lovers. That's one of my favorite tropes in contemporary. But yeah, I think I'll wait and talk about that more in my end of the month wrap up because it was surprising to me and a really it was an interesting reading experience, and yeah, one that I enjoyed. So that was like my spate of romance that I read last weekend. So looking forward to things that I'm going to read next. I know I said this last month and like the whole thing with my dad really kind of derailed these plans. Not that that really matters, but it did. But I really, really want to get caught up on my arcs. That's my main thing. I want to get through all the arcs that I have so I don't feel pressure to read them anymore. And I've said this before, but I've really realized that I have to like be much more selective in the arcs that I request, not because I don't enjoy the ones I get, it's just that it creates this like pressure situation for me, and I'm such a mood reader that I just don't think having a lot of them is that constructive for me. So that's something I've realized about myself this year. But one arc that I am very excited to get, and I'm so like happy about this because this is the first physical arc that I've ever received that the publisher wanted to send to me, and I'm like, I feel like a real booktuber now. And I mean, I know that doesn't actually matter, but it's just like, oh, this is such like a fun experience. It's also from a publisher that I really like. It's Europa Editions. They publish just like really interesting things. Basically, they specialize in publishing European language, so like French, Spanish, Czech, whatever, into English here in the US, and I think also in the UK, I'm not sure, but that's kind of like what they specialize in. And this is actually the first of a very popular YA quartet of books. I don't think the fourth one has come out yet in France. One of my, Marie was telling me that the fourth one hadn't come out yet, but this is the first one, and this has been described to me as being Harry Potter-esque in the sense of like the phenomenon it has been in the French-speaking world. Not that it's like a one-to-one plot situation, but it is YA fantasy. It has something to do with like mirrors and arcs, and the main character's name is Ophelia. I don't know. It just seemed really interesting when I was reading the description. So I'm excited to get to this. I believe this comes out a week from tomorrow. I think it comes out on the 25th. So yeah, if you're I will let you guys know what I think about this, but it is a beautiful cover, right? Europa always has really beautiful covers. Yeah, I'm excited to get to this. This is an arc, and that, like, it's one that I'm also in the mood to read, so this aligns well with my mood reading, so that's good. And then in terms of a couple of arcs that I've gotten since I talked to you guys last month, I actually got Give Me Your Hand from Meghan Abbott as an arc, which was weird because it came out in the middle of July, but I guess they had some left that they could give out, so like way after the fact they sent me one, which it's great. I hope to read that soon. Same kind of thing with The Phantom Tree. I got the arc of it the day it came out, so I want to read that. That's by Nicola Cormick. I think it's like a time traveling thing. I've heard a lot of really good things, so I'm intrigued by it. I got Changeling from Molly Harper. Molly Harper writes contemporary, like paranormal type romances that I really enjoy. They're very rom-com-y in tone, which is a little unusual in the paranormal space, but I quite like that. Particularly her, what is it called? Half Moon Hollow. I like that series better than I liked her original series. And she also has some like werewolf, but like she's just fun. She's like light fun. And this is, I think, a YA book from her. So I'm intrigued to get to that. The War Before the War. I'm trying to remember what this one is. It's by Andrew Delblanco, and I think it's about Reconstruction period in the U.S. Fugitive slaves in the struggle for America's soul from the Revolution to the Civil War. So JK, it's about fugitive slaves. So after reading Stamped from the Beginning, and also I listened to Slate University on slavery, and that was fascinating. So between those two things, I've been very intrigued about like resistance basically among enslaved peoples in the US and like ways that they fought back. So I'm interested to read that. And then the arc that I'm most excited about, this comes out at the beginning of November. It is Little White Lies by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. If you guys watch my channel, you know that I absolutely love her Natural series. It's like one of my favorite YA series I've ever read. Like, I just think it's super good. So this is a new YA mystery, the beginning of a YA mystery series from her. So I am hype, so excited. I mean, would I like 20 more books in the Natural series? Yeah, like I would. But if I'm not getting that, I'm happy to have more YA mystery from her. So I'm really excited about that one. And then 4 things I have out from the library. I still have Visions and Death from J.D. Robb. See, part of the problem with having all these arcs is I don't get to the books that I'm in the mood to read. I would really like to get to that one because I love the In-Depth series and I want to keep making progress. I have The Ones You Can't Forget from Roni Loren. I got about halfway through it and had to give it back to the library, so I just need to finish that one up, basically. I really loved the first in that series, which is essentially about, it's like romances that are set between people who survived a mass shooting at their high school 10 years earlier, so the first one was really good. I have An Unwanted Guest from Shari Lapper, I think is her name. And it just sounds like a snowed-in murder mystery, and I'm like here for that. And I've also heard of her work before, so I'm interested to just give her a try. And then I finally got The Wedding Date out from the library from Jasmine, what's her name? Guillroy. Everybody loved this book. It is one of those like, it's a romance, but it didn't have an embarrassing cover, so it actually got like wider release earlier in the year. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of see what I think about it as somebody who reads in that genre quite a bit, because it got a lot of kind of hype, and I'm just curious to see what I think about it in light of other contemporaries I've read. So I think that's most of what's sort of on my radar right now for the rest of September. We'll see what I do and don't get to. I have a few arcs that I need to have read for the beginning of October, which I talked, I think, about last month. Yeah, I think I'm trying to make space for me to get back to mood reading. That's sort of like the theme here, because I think if I can do that, I'm gonna be happier. The other thing I've realized is that, I mean, I have had the stuff with my dad going on, but also my new job is just like actually demanding in a way that pretty much I haven't had a job be demanding in like 5 or 6 years. So I do think I'm just gonna have less energy or like mental space to read than I've had for the last few years. So I'm kind of expecting that I'm gonna slow down a little bit. I mean, I've already read 12 books this month, so it's not like, I'm not talking about massively, but I think I'm kind of trying to adjust my expectations in terms of how much I can get through in a month, especially if I'm reading heavier books or like more substantive books and not just sort of like mysteries or romance or like sort of like lighter genre fiction. So yeah, I'm kind of trying to make that adjustment too. I don't know if any of this was interesting to anyone. I'm always sort of amazed that people like these videos because I feel like I'm just sort of rambling, but if you did like it, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below. And just so you know, on Instagram, whenever I'm reading things, I sort of like do reading vlogs on Insta stories if that's of interest this to you. And then I also always rate things on Goodreads, so if you want to stay up on what I'm thinking, those are two good places to follow me in particular. So I think that will do it. Hope you're having a great one, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!